Welcome back to Mets Daily. I'm your host, Jake Brown. Make sure you smash that thumbs up right now on YouTube. Every one of those helps. So smash that thumbs up, comment below. Make sure you follow me at Jake Brown Radio on all social media. Subscribe to my YouTube. And subscribe, share the channel. Again, at 1,200 subscribers. We're doing well a month in. Let's keep the grind going. As players report, we are reporting, per usual, as we do every day on Mets Daily, to spring training. It's a beautiful sight. Every video comes out. There's a new guy showing up. More players that show up next week. And, a new guy that won't show up probably at all this season, but will be in a Mets uniform rehabbing at the very least in 2025, is Drew Smith. The Mets have signed Drew Smith to a one-year deal with a 2026 club option. And listen, I am not a big Drew Smith fan. I'm going to be honest. He has Tommy John surgery last year in July. He's going to likely miss most of the season. And, he is a home run waiting to happen. Now, I get his overall numbers are not bad, and he's now the longest tenured Mets pitcher since 2018. Edwin Diaz would have been the longest if they were to have moved on from Drew Smith. But the goal here is for him to rehab, get him right, and then get him in 2026. I don't hate the move. Listen, it's $1 million for him to rehab. Maybe he's back in August, September, and then you have him in 2026. To me, he's just been too inconsistent for my liking and gives up home runs in big spots that I don't have the most faith in him to be successful. But, maybe Tommy John now and coming back from that will get him right. So my hope is he doesn't pitch in 2025. I'd rather him not part of the 2025 Mets. But what I think this means and what the Mets are doing is, they're preaching family. They're preaching treating their players right. And a guy who's been the longest tenure Met in terms of a pitcher since 2018 here, they said, hey, we're going to give you $1 million. You're going to rehab. You're going to get right. If you could come back late season, great, but don't push it because we'll give you $2 million in 2026. That you would assume if he comes back okay that they'll accept that, and there are potential incentives in that deal too. Smith only pitched 17 2/3 innings last year. He's dealt with a couple injuries in his career. He missed a whole season due to injury in 2019. So, listen, he's not a guy who's going to give you 70 innings out of the bullpen, but I think the Mets hope he comes back in 2026 and he can maybe give you 50 or so. So, Drew Smith back in a Mets uniform. That is the signing today. Another guy who's now officially in a Mets uniform. We were waiting for the official note is Pete Alonso. Alonso has passed his physical, and he will report next week to spring training. The Mets made the deal official. David Stearns had an official press conference at 4:30, and there were a couple interesting nuggets to that. That's obviously the first one. 2 years, $54 million is now done. He didn't fail the physical. We don't have a Carlos Gomez situation. Pete Alonso will be the Mets' first baseman in 2025, but a guy that probably won't be on the diamond with him that we found out is Jose Iglesias. And the Candelita era feels like it is now over, and it pretty much is a lock to be over, as David Stearns addressed that. And, he pointed to positional flexibility and players that can be optioned to the minors as a factor for not bringing back Iglesias this year. And, it was something he said, having some flexibility there in that role is frankly probably needed for us right now. What he's saying is, hey, we need to find a spot for Ronnie Mauricio when he's ready. Remember, Ronnie Mauricio won't play spring training games till mid-March. We need to find a spot for Luis Angel Acuna if he makes the roster. We have Jeff McNeil right now at second and under contract for next year as well. So they're in a spot. Remember, they got Jet Williams potentially down the road. They have all these infielders, but no spots to play them. So their thought was, hey, if we're going to pay Iglesias, which he was great for us, we love him, we want him to be able to play, and I think he wants a place that he's able to play because it would only be a one-year deal. That's all he's looking for. If he plays here 40 or 50 games, he's not going to make a penny next year. He can't go into free agency and get a nice contract. This was kind of his off season to get that contract after what he did last year. OMG, all the attention he brought. So, unfortunately, it feels over, and it's basically locked that it is over with Jose Iglesias. We thank you for the memories. I am going to watch back 2024 Mets yearbook. I have access to that, watch that now. So I can't wait to watch that back and kind of, remember the memories and remember the OMG. And I got to hold the original sign the night Kodai Senga got hurt. So I guess I retired that sign, and that was the night he came back against the Braves on the Friday night, 5 innings. In the 6th inning, hurt his calf, and he was pretty much done for the year. Tried to come back in the playoffs, but wasn't too successful. But, he talked about Alonso and the excitement to have him. He said, you could see the excitement he had to be back in this building. And he said, obviously, he makes us a better team. So, and I agree. Listen, I've always said on here, I think they should move on from Pete Alonso, but in the end, the Mets are a better team with Alonso. It's a short-term deal. And, your hope is that having Juan Soto in front of him now gives him more pitches to hit, gives him some meatballs where Pete Alonso can get back to being that 40-homer guy that we know and that we loved. And if he can be that guy, he'll get paid. The Mets will do well. The middle of the line will be cooking. And all will be good and gravy in Mets land. So Pete's back, and, it's good that that's now official. A guy that is on the mound and throwing is Clay Holmes, the former Yankee, threw 3 innings Wednesday of live BP. And this was fascinating to watch because, remember, Clay Holmes is kind of this X factor in the team. We don't know what you're going to get out of him. He hasn't been a starting pitcher since his rookie year in 2018. You just don't know what he is. But listen, this was a 2-time All-Star in the last 3 seasons. And now, as a starting pitcher, I've told you guys on here, he's going to have new pitches in the arsenal. And on day 1, we saw it. On day 1 of him on the mound, you saw it looking at 2 new pitches. Now, one of them he did throw a couple of times last year, and that's the 4-seam fastball. But great stuff here by Isaac Goffman on X talking about these pitches. And you can see that clip of the video on his Twitter. I put the screen grab of it. But the 4-seamer he threw 0.2% of the time last year for the Yankees. His brand new pitch that he did not throw is this kick change. Now, the kick change, he slows his body a bit and gets more trunk tilt. And if he doesn't clean it up, it'll become a tip. It'll become a tip pitch. Devin Williams, Pete Alonso, we know it well. So, that's going to be something. Obviously, it's day 1 here, spring training, him throwing. That's something I'm sure Jeremy Hefner and this coaching staff is going to clean up. But, man, now we get to see Clay Holmes, starting pitcher, 5-pitch arsenal. You see on the screen there his usage, 56.3% of the time the sinker, 23% of the time the slider, 20.5% of the time the sweeper, and 0.2% of the time was the 4-seam fastball. Now you get to see those numbers even out. That sinker maybe gets down to 45%. Maybe the slider gets down to 18%. Maybe the sweeper gets down to 18%. And then you see the 4-seam and the kick change. Man, if you could get that sinker mixed in with a kick change and back those up. If you could go sinker, sweeper, kick change, you could fool a lot of hitters here. And Clay Holmes, as a 5 or 6 inning starter, can be an integral piece of this Mets rotation. So I'm excited to see how this plays out. And if it does work out, I think a lot of question marks we talk about with this team and this starting rotation might be answered by Clay Holmes and what could be a revelation. On Mets Daily, on Hump Days, we do our mailbag each week. And the Hump Day Mets Daily mailbag reads the top 3 comments from Tuesday's YouTube video. So if you're watching this now, comment. I read your comments. We will respond to the good ones. If there's a good one today, I'll talk about it tomorrow. We want to engage you, the listener, the fan. Next week, we will have our first guest on the show. Excited to have guests involved at least once a week, every couple of weeks here on Mets Daily. So looking forward to that, but we want to get you involved, the watcher of Mets Daily, supporter of Mets Daily. So make sure you comment below, and as always, smash that thumbs up, subscribe, share the channel. All right, here we go. Let's go to our top 3 comments from Tuesday. This one coming in from Frederick Hockey 2760. The one name not mentioned, he said on yesterday's video, is Jeff McNeil. How can Acuna and others find at-bats and playing time if McNeil is the everyday second baseman? Well, Frederick, I think what you got to realize here is, one, I don't think they're going to play Jeff McNeil against left-hand pitchers. I think Luis Angel Acuna will be the starting second baseman against left-hand pitching. I think the Mets got to do whatever they can to put the best lineup out there every day, and I'd rather have right-hand hitting Luis Angel Acuna with his speed, his defense, playing over Jeff McNeil. So I think that's where Acuna definitely will play. And again, late in games, if they bring in a lefty to face Jeff McNeil, bing, bang, boom, you send up Acuna, he plays second base, you have speed, you have defense, you got a right-hand hitter going up against a lefty. So having that dynamic of that 1-2 punch at second, is going to find him a spot to play. Iglesias now we know won't be here. Madrigal is not going to play much at all. He'll be a late game defensive replacement maybe. Madrigal is the backup shortstop. That's if he makes the roster. Ronnie Mauricio, he'll get a shot. Like I've said on here, I think Ronnie Mauricio has a chance to be a part-time DH for this team. I feel like a Starling Marte trade could happen at some point, either before or during the season, which would open up a spot for Mauricio to play. But Mauricio's not ready. He's going to start in the minor leagues, at least for April, maybe May, and then we'll see him by the summertime. But Mauricio's just not game ready yet. So he'll find a spot eventually, but I do see Acuna being that guy. And you also got to factor in, what if McNeil does struggle? Then maybe it's Mauricio and Acuna, and they kick the can and say goodbye to McNeil or try and trade him, or maybe they just cut bait and eat the money. So we don't know what Jeff McNeil we're getting, but again, I think he plays versus righties and Acuna versus lefties. This one from Vista Physical Therapy and Andre H7629. I don't know, Vista, Florida. We get some physical therapy in the comments. Why not bring back Quintana? Well, I think the Mets realized they kind of got all they got out of Jose Quintana last year. I just don't think they're going to get a repeat season out of him. They got like a career best out of Jose Quintana, and they know what he is. He's a number 4. He's a number 5. The Mets already have 2 left-hand starting pitchers in the rotation. Not that it hurts to have a third, but I think they realize, I don't know if they could get any better from Quintana. Maybe he ends up signing for a year. He's still out there. Maybe they get him here late. But the Mets look at their starting pitching staff, and they have 8 starting pitchers. Like I said, like, yeah, you might not like a few of them, but Jose Quintana wants to be in a rotation. He doesn't want to have the chance to be the 6th starter for the Mets. He'd probably rather go somewhere where he's a lock to be in the 5-man rotation, so he has a chance to make money next offseason and not just be a fringe starter. So I don't know if the Mets want to add Jose Quintana as a 9th starter. I just don't see it happening. I agree. It feels like it makes sense because he was a big part of the Mets' success last year, but it doesn't appear to be happening. And David Stearns pretty much said today in his presser, this is our team. He said, like, they're pretty much done adding players. So I think this, with the outside addition of maybe a depth piece, this is who the Mets are in 2025. All right, last one. This one was very long, but I took the last paragraph from Dash X 1103. He said, or they said, it might be a girl, I don't know. I could see this season going a number of ways, and for me, it comes down to the rotation. I could see this as a sub-500 team because of starting pitching. I could see this as a wild card playoff team because starting pitching was solid, and I could see this as a legit championship team if the rotation excels. Should be a wild ride. I think you hit the nail on the head here. I think we know what the Mets offense is. It's one of the best in baseball. It's a top 5 lineup in baseball. They have one of the greatest hitters of our generation in Juan Soto. You got a great top line frontline starters in Manaea and Kodai Senga mixed in with Peterson. But 4 and beyond, 4, 5, 6, and those depth guys could determine this Mets season. If they really crap the bed and aren't good, maybe the team does miss the playoffs. Listen, I don't see a scenario the Mets are sub 500. I disagree with that. I think at the very worst, they're a couple of games over 500. Sub 500, I think, is a little too pessimistic. But I could see a situation where they crap the bed and they're, an 84-win team. But I think you're right. If this rotation excels with that back end of the bullpen, with this lineup, with a GM that will add, with a manager that excelled in his first year, there's no doubting the Mets, when they're hitting on all cylinders, can be a championship team. There's no doubt about that. And if the second half of the rotation isn't good, maybe they compete for a wild card. So it could go a lot of different ways, and we'll be here to cover it all every day on Mets Daily as we approach more players showing up to Port St. Lucie. Make sure you smash that thumbs up on the video, subscribe to Mets Daily, share the channel with your Mets fan family and friends. I'm Jake Brown at Jake Brown Radio on all social media. We'll talk to you tomorrow on Thursday, February 13th, right here on Mets Daily. Thanks for watching.